Relationships can be the best thing that ever happened to you, or the worst. While so many people go out looking for the one, the reality is that it doesn't always end well. Sometimes you make a bad call. Sometimes the person changes on you. And sometimes they find someone else and decide that you're just in the way. My name is Brienne, and I'm the host and creator of Among the Dirt and Trees, a show where we explore true crime cases that occur out in nature. In today's episode, we're going to discuss someone's 1998 attempt at stealing Ted Binion's hidden treasure. Oh, and a murder, of course. On September 20th, 1998, police made an interesting discovery. A man named Rick Tabish was on property that didn't belong to him, and he wasn't just hanging out there either. Rick Tabish, along with two cohorts, were on this property with an excavator and a dump truck. And this obviously caught the attention of police for a few reasons. The first was that this wasn't Rick's property, and it didn't belong to either of the other two guys either. The second reason was that they didn't have the permission of the owner to be on the property. And the third reason was the reason that they didn't have that permission. The owner of the property, Ted Binion, had been dead for 3 days. For obvious reasons, the police were fairly interested in what these men were doing and why. I think we can all agree that it kind of sounds like a movie scene. Most people don't go around digging on the property of dead people. Not without some kind of, certificate or license or something at least. The plot thickened when it became clear that these weren't random people digging on random property. Tabish knew the dead man and had been one of his associates. Police continued to search the area and found what Tabish and his assistants were looking for. A giant concrete bunker. And inside of it was what can really only be described as treasure. Ted Binion's vault had money in every form. Paper money, a ton of rare coins, and a literal 6 tons of pure silver. This secret vault had millions of dollars hidden away in it. Which brings us back to Rick Tabish. How did he know the treasure was there, and what made him decide to break the law and go for it? Now, the most basic conclusion is that Tabish knew about the vault and decided to take advantage of the situation. After all, Ted Binion had just died. He could have thought that there was a window where he could swoop in and steal the treasure before anyone knew to look for it, or before they even found out about it. As far as we know, Ted was not out bragging about his vault and treasure, but a couple people did know about it. It was rumored that he buried treasure like this all over his properties. Ted Binion was a wealthy man who was born into a gambling empire, more or less. Now, I don't like to limit people to stereotypical tropes, but Ted Binion sounds like the kind of guy that you would expect to be running a gambling empire. He did a lot of drugs, he was charged for drug trafficking, and he hung out with a lot of criminals. Police even believe that he used his girlfriend, Sandy Murphy, to help him carry out his crimes by having her run errands for him. At the time, Murphy was a dancer at a local topless bar, but her extracurriculars began to get more criminal in nature when she started dating Ted Binion, at least as far as we know. No one was really happy about this, least of all Ted's wife and daughter. Understandably, they left him behind with Murphy, and Ted's professional life wasn't going great either. He was forced out of certain roles at work because of his criminal history. Ultimately, he was banned from the casino property. since he was using the casino as his own personal vault, it meant that he had to move everything, and that is what started his interest in burying his wealth in different places. And it seems like this move finally got him some negative attention from the less than great people that he associated with. But that's not actually what police thought happened to him initially. Not at least until they found his old colleagues digging up his property before he was even put in the ground himself. Originally, police believed that he died from an overdose-induced suicide. When Ted Binion was found, he was dead on a mattress on the floor. All around him was the perfect scene for an overdose. There were empty pill bottles and drug paraphernalia. His autopsy revealed that he had Valium, Xanax, and heroin in his system. And they had clear trails of him purchasing the Xanax and heroin. The heroin obviously came from a drug dealer, but the Xanax was a little more surprising. Somehow, Ted Binion convinced his neighbor, who was a doctor, to give him the Xanax prescription, and then he went and filled the prescription himself. The suicide part of the theory came from his girlfriend, Sandy Murphy. She told police that he had been suicidal after being forced out of the casino. She even, I think rather heartlessly, pointed to his family's history of drug addiction and suicide as evidence. And it made a lot of sense to them. At least until police caught Rick Tabish. Suddenly, this odd suicide started to look a little more suspicious. In fact, Ted didn't even show the usual overdose symptoms in his death. There was something weird about his drug use, too. They actually found heroin in his stomach, which is not a normal way to take heroin, so obvious red flag there. It kind of looked like somebody just wanted it to be in his system. Police changed his cause of death from overdose and suicide to a suspected homicide. They believed that his death was staged, and then the real investigation started. Police had statements from both Sandy Murphy and Rick Tabish that made them obvious suspects. And their investigation led them to known rumors that Murphy was cheating with Tabish. The two of them were arrested for planning his murder, killing him, and a bunch of charges related to stealing his stuff. It was determined that they planned to kill him and make off with his fortune. They were both found guilty. At the time, they received a sentence of over 20 years up to a life sentence apiece. But in 2003, the convictions were overturned due to a violation during the trial. They basically said it wasn't fair how it was set up. They were both acquitted of murder, but they were still charged with burglary and grand larceny. Tabish also got charged for the use of a deadly weapon. Murphy was released for time served, and Tabish was in prison until 2010. In the end, Ted Binion's fortune went to his family, with the majority of it going to his daughter, and I have to say that his daughter and his estranged wife are what really haunts me about this case. Obviously, Ted Binion was the victim in this crime, but when you look at the story, it really does seem like Ted was a criminal whose actions finally caught up to him. I just wonder if Murphy and Tabish would have arranged for the whole family to die if they needed to, I guess. Either way, both Murphy and Tabish have since been released from prison, and it doesn't sound like they managed to make off with any of the treasure either. So, if you would like to discuss casino laws, criminal on criminal violence, or red flags in a relationship, feel free to contact me on Twitter or Instagram using the tag @datpod. Thanks, guys.